Hey, good morning. Day 4 FCF, where we're looking at situations with clothing, of all things, with garments. And we're going to fast forward a little bit to the time when Solomon, David's father, was the king, but he was about to pass from the scene. And sadly, in 1 Kings chapter 11, we read about Solomon that as he got older, his many wives turned his heart away from God, and he started allowing all these idols to be brought into Jerusalem. And the Lord's heart, of course, was broken because of this. And he starts to bring corrective activity into Solomon's life. And one of the things that it finally comes to is that God's raising up a man that's literally going to tear the kingdom apart. We're going to meet a man named Jeroboam that God raises up. And the 12 tribes of Israel, kind of like we have 50 states, there was 12 states, if you want to look at it like that, of Israel. They're going to be shredded from this point on. Let me just pick up reading in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 26. It says, "Also Jeroboam, son of Nebat, rebelled against the king. He was one of Solomon's officials, an Ephraimite from Zeredah, and his mother was a widow, named Zeruiah." So Jeroboam started out as a workman for Solomon. Solomon gave him, raises and lifted up his prestige. But now he rebels against Solomon. Let me read you what happens next. Same chapter 11, verse 29. "About that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, and Ahijah the prophet of Shiloh met him along the way wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone out in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak." So Jeroboam's wearing a new cloak. Ahijah the prophet took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it in 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I'm going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes." This is about 930 BC when this occurs. And this is the split of the kingdom of Israel. They had 3 rulers that ruled over all Israel, all the 12 tribes or 12 states. You had Saul, the first one, you had David the second, and then you had Solomon. They each ruled about 40 years, but now there's going to be a split, and this split never is brought back together. Jeroboam takes 10 tribes. That's what the ripping of his cloak symbolized, the 10 pieces. He takes 10 tribes, and God talks to Jeroboam favorably. He says, "Listen, if you'll be faithful to me, unlike what Solomon was doing at the time," he says, "if you'll be faithful, I'll bless you, just like I was going to bless David's lineage." He says, "But if you don't, well, then, I can't bless somebody that's misrepresenting me to the world." Well, Jeroboam goes, and ultimately he becomes the worst disaster. He creates a totally foreign worship system. He creates an utter distortion of the true image of God. He brings in false priests and prophets, and for the next 208 years, the 10 northern tribes of Israel, they live completely antagonistically toward God, and it becomes just a heartbreak altogether. But it all started with Solomon's drifting from faithfulness to God. But this cloak that's torn in 10 pieces, it represented the tearing of God's heart as well as the tearing of his kingdom. I can't help but wonder as we close today if maybe you've had an experience in your life where someone that was a part of you, someone that was meant to stay a part of you, could be a friend, could be a work associate, it could be a relative, could be a spouse for that matter, could be a child, but for a season at least, they've been torn apart from you. But you're in a pivotal place. If you stay faithful to God, at least you create a circumstance where the Spirit of God can continue to work and try to bring a good result, maybe a reunification. Jeroboam didn't do that. He didn't cooperate from God. He went further yet. And those 10 tribes never came back. In fact, in 722 BC, Assyria overruns them. They are scattered all over the Assyrian Empire, and we never hear from them again. Let's not let that be true of you and I. While we can still mend the torn cloaks, let's cooperate with God to do that. Thank you.